Welcome to the Nautilus files. Okay, so we're really gonna try to do this. We're gonna try and tackle Russian Doll Season 2. Now, my character analysis videos are generally about getting to the core of what a character is about. But with this show, that's a little more difficult to do because of how wacky the story arc is. And because Russian Doll is more about what happens to the character than the character themselves. To be honest, the best way I can go about this is to focus on the world Nadia exists in and how it speaks to her. Because in all honesty, the world Nadia lives in is a kind of character in of itself. And as always, while I may not cover the entire story, I do talk about some of the details of the story if you don't want that spoiled for you. Now's the time to jump on that 6 train and get out of here. Don't worry, that'll make sense to you after you go back and watch Russian Doll and come back and watch this video. In Season 2, Nadia has been living a death-free life for long enough time that she's become pretty confident that this never-ending time loop problem is a thing of the past. Pardon the pun. But like the first season, this universe still thinks she needs to learn a lesson. While the universe keeps pushing her towards a truth despite her protests, and all the while, we the audience get to explore her life along with her. And like the namesake, we get to the core of the issue by removing one layer of the problem at a time until we get to the nitty-gritty, as it were. This is where the train comes in. Nadia discovers that she can jump around in time whenever she takes the 6 with the intention of going somewhere or falling asleep on it. Side note, as a New York City native, I can tell you that falling asleep on a New York City train is a bad idea, unless you really like surprises that won't make you smile. Nadia learns that not only can she jump around in time, but she can also become her own mother, Nora, and grandmother, Vera. With this kind of control, Nadia thinks this is the perfect opportunity to fix her mother's greatest sin and repair the relationship with Nora's mother, thereby deconstructing the series of events that led to her mother's demise and Nadia's interrupted childhood. Sounds like an easy plan, right? What could go wrong? Well, it's Russian Doll, so everything goes wrong. One of the things that stuck with me about this show is how the writers use the characters around her to explain the rules and ultimately the moral lesson behind Nadia's story arc. There is an underlying philosophy that holds throughout the chaotic storytelling style that is pretty compelling. The dialogue is handled in a way that isn't overly heavy-handed, but still stands out enough for you to take full notice, while still sounding believable in this magical reality kind of world. People in Nadia's life say the right thing at the right time, but Nadia doesn't want to hear it, and that's why we have a show to talk about. Let's begin by looking at the characters of Russian Doll Season 2 and see what they have to tell us. We learned in the first season that Nora was highly unpredictable as a mother and suffered from mental illness. This made it difficult for her to be a good parent to Nadia, despite her best intentions. Nadia has held some resentment towards her mother for this, and she wants to see if she can fix this somehow. Nadia becomes Nora and experiences paranoid schizophrenia firsthand, and she is committed to a mental institution. It's here that she finally gets to see what it's like to be Nora, and knowing this allows her to forgive her mother for her suspect parenting. But this doesn't stop her from trying to change the past in other ways. Nadia goes as far as trying to steal her infant self from her mother and bring it to the present. I assume to raise it herself, so she can avoid the trauma of her own childhood. But this breaks time so badly that even Nadia has to concede defeat here and decides to return her infant self back to her mother in the 1960s. But we'll get more into that when we talk about Ruth later. The first character Nadia meets when she jumps into the past, 1962, is Cesare. She doesn't know it yet, but she is living in the body of Nora, her mother. Now, Ches is a guy that Nora had a fling with, and he's kind of a co-conspirator of sorts, with the whole steal the gold coins thing. Ches is not the best choice for a partner. That much is pretty obvious. I'm trying to be nice here. He brings Nadia along to steal the bag of coins the very night she shows up in this time period. Nadia thinks, hey, if I can reverse this whole thing, maybe grandma won't hate mom and everything turns up roses. So she tries to retrieve the money they stole together to return to her grandmother. But the money keeps disappearing, try as she might. Nadia assumes Ches is the culprit, and that's because he was, at least one of the times it disappeared, and ends up hunting him down in the modern day to find out what happened to the gold. Nadia finds a much older, modern day Ches who hasn't changed in the slightest, and presses him for answers. But he honestly has no idea because he didn't take the coins at that time, but he does drop a line on her that is pretty important.
Coney Island is the thing that would have made everything better if only it had happened, or didn't happen.
So the universe is speaking through Ches here, and it's basically saying, hey, you know what? That thing you think is the cause of all your misery probably isn't. And even if it was, you couldn't change that. So why sit around stewing over what you could have had or could have been when you could be living your best life right now? AKA a Coney Island, an event that takes place in life that we believe would have made all the difference. The message is, forget the past, it's done, deal with now, because that's all you have. This is Nadia we're talking about, so yeah, forget about that ever happening. So once again, the time-traveling train gives her a chance to go all the way back to post-World War II to retrieve her family's valuables that were confiscated by the Germans, thinking she can nip it in the bud, as it were. If the Krugerrands never existed in the first place, there's no way for Nora and Chez to steal them. Yahtzee. Nadia manages to locate the goods and hides them in a tunnel wall for her grandmother to retrieve later. Unfortunately, after she finds them, she ends up taking those items to a pawn shop and exchanging them for those dang Krugerrands. Time wins again. Nadia takes the bag of coins and hides them under the couch in the very spot where they would be stolen from her later. It almost seems as if she's surrendering to fate and accepting that time or the past cannot be reversed or altered, but that doesn't last too long. Vera and her closest friend, Delia, barely escaped the Nazis, and her life has been a tough one to say the least. The possessions she was able to bring away from that situation and convert into gold coins represents that entire part of her life, so it is easy to see how she would be insulted by Nora's actions regarding it. Nadia doesn't seem to appreciate the full gravity of these events, and has a flippant attitude towards Vera when she's upset about the loss of the Krugerrands, when she says things like,
"What's Hungarian for, in the end, it's just money. We'll get through this together."
It's just money. Later in the same episode, Delia confronts Nadia, telling her that the gold was so much more than just money. It's not until Nadia goes back to 1944 as Vera and sees it for herself that she begins to understand how much the coins meant to Vera and Delia. Alan is having a great time in his version of the time-traveling train adventures, until he's not. Alan lives life through the eyes of his grandmother, Agnes, a Ghanaian exchange student in Berlin. He seems to really like the attention he's finally getting in his day-to-day and has no interest in changing any of that. It's not until he's faced with the prospect of losing a close relation in Lenny that things start to fall apart for him. Alan's Grammy was part of a group of young Berliners who hatched a plan to tunnel their way under the Berlin Wall. Alan wants to be with Lenny but does not want to take the massive risk that escaping through the tunnel would mean. He knows this is a crazy idea and has no interest in upending his life over it. But he also wants to try to convince Lenny not to go because he thinks that's what he's here to do. In the end, the choice is made for him because Lenny escapes through the tunnel before he has a chance to stop him, and he has no idea whether he made it or not, or if he's even okay. When Alan is in the void, he meets his grandmother Agnes and asks her whatever happened to Lenny.
Alan, I don't know. And that's all right. He was never going to stay. I was never going to go. I couldn't leave the life I was building. I helped him get out. There was no other way it was supposed to have been.
Alan picks up on what Grammy's putting down here. This trip into the past was never about trying to change the past or stop the bad things from happening. It was a chance to experience the past and learn about the people who came before him so that he can understand how he got here, but not get stuck there. What's done is done, and getting stuck in this state of analysis paralysis is preventing Alan from just living and enjoying his present life. It takes a degree of courage to make tough choices and live with those consequences, something that Alan has trouble dealing with, but he is learning. Alan is much keener to understand the lessons being taught by the time-traveling, body-snatching experiences they've been having. He seems to figure out these points before Nadia does, and tries to warn her on more than one occasion.
Maybe it's not about fixing anything. You know, like you said, we leveled up. Maybe we're just supposed to, like, I don't know, enjoy the ride.
Alan tries to relay this message to Nadia again when she returns to the present day with baby Nadia.
Can't escape being the product of things we can't change.
He says that it's human nature, or that it's a built-in feature, that we are products of the past, and the idea of trying to change that is wasted energy. I didn't think I was going to have to talk about Horse, but Horse is actually a pretty important character. He doesn't have a lot of screen time in this season, and can you imagine if he did? Anyway, this horse character is clearly important. He's kind of like this sagacious spirit animal that seems to enter Nadia's life at just the right time to nudge her forward when she's found herself in an emotional ditch. In season 2, he does not disappoint. When Nadia returns to turn baby Nadia to Nora in the past, she has a little trouble finding the 6, and her horse, who pops up like an Oompa Loompa and leads her onto the tracks where the 6 is apparently stuck or waiting. He demands the 2 pay a fare and lets them on the train, but not before mumbling this line that I think is very key to the story.
Everything falls down. The closer to the center of the earth you are, the closer you are to the truth. Gravity.
Everything falls, because gravity is unstoppable and inevitable. The closer we get to Earth's core, the stronger and more obvious that force becomes. It becomes undeniable with great proximity. Horse, of course, is being literal and metaphorical, but the idea is transferable. The closer we get to the core of Nadia and Alan's problem, the more obvious the answer to the big question becomes. The real question, though, is can they accept the truth? He also says that babies are true materialists. Explaining materialism in the philosophical sense is an hour-long video in itself, but as it relates to the story, Horse implies that a baby is fully the product of external physical forces and doesn't have a choice in the matter. Thus, babies are blameless as a matter of fact. This lines up well with his previous quotes, as well as Alan's line about people being the product of human nature. There are some things that mold us that are outside of our control. Ruth is the person that snaps Nadia out of her delusions and back on the right path, as she always has. It's good to have somebody in your corner that is always willing to tell you the truth without killing your dreams. Ruth is essentially that to Nadia. She is Nadia's mother because Nadia's birth mother wasn't capable. She's been Nadia's rock for as long as she's been alive, but now she's reaching the twilight of her own life. The writers hint that she is coming to grips with her own mortality with the frequent hospital visits that Nadia shows up for. Nadia finds this particularly difficult to deal with for somewhat selfish reasons. The woman who has been there for her through thick and thin now needs her, but Nadia is elsewhere, too mired down in her own problems to really be present. Nadia's recent preoccupation with delving into her past to try to change her life has blinded her to the present, and she isn't there for Ruth in her final moments. In one of her treks into the past, the universe, by way of Ruth, tries to tell her as much in the simplest of terms.
What'd I do?
I just need you to be right here with me, right here, right now. Can you do that? Okay.
We're here.
Ruth's passing is the gut punch that really brings Nadia back to reality. She is devastated that she wasn't there for Ruth in the end. She chose the past over the present and got burned. Her realization of this is represented in her time in the void, where she's holding baby Nadia, the present, but comes across the bag of Krugerrands, the past, and has to make a choice because she can't carry both. This choice resets time back to where she has enough time to make it to the wake and be reunited with all the people in her life that matter. The second season of Russian Doll's theme examines how we tend to view the past as the end-all definition of who we are today. It's because our thinking is so cause and effect oriented that we tend to dwell on the past mistakes and place so much import on them. It is also the source of so much anxiety about the future. But the truth is, the present is the only thing that really exists. So while it's good to look into the past for wisdom and learn from experiences, it's equally important to live for today, because time keeps moving forward regardless of what direction you're looking in. That's it for this video, Russian Doll Season 2. Hopefully there'll be a Season 3. I don't know, maybe I'll even go back and do Season 1. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you already know what to do. Take care of yourself out there, and I'll see you next time. Peace.